She died while giving birth to her daughter. But then a miracle happened. Melanie Pritchard had no idea that she would go into labor and wake up 3 days later in the intensive care unit of a different hospital with just a vague recollection of what had happened. Hello, welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be telling the tragic story of Melanie Pritchard, who almost died while giving birth to her daughter, but then was saved by immense prayers. When Doug and Melanie learned they were having a girl, they were overjoyed. They were eager to give their son the younger sister he had always wished for. The delighted pair went shopping for something special as the pregnancy neared 40 weeks. But in week 39, something unexpected occurred. Melanie started having little contractions that morning. She and Doug traveled to the hospital while having fun because the situation wasn't yet so profound. The doctor broke her water when they arrived after waiting for the contractions to get stronger. At that point, everything became worse. Nothing seemed to indicate anything was wrong until Melanie started feeling weak and queasy and complained of feeling dizzy. It was then that they understood how incorrect they had been right in front of them. As the seconds passed, Melanie closed her eyes and fainted. Her blood pressure dropped to 0, her heart rate slowed, and she turned blue and could not breathe. To make matters worse, because the baby had not yet been born, the baby's vital signs also started to decline. Doug, her husband, was horrified to see her blood pressure and pulse rate plummet to 0. The medical team realized they needed to take rapid action since things were getting out of hand. She was brought in quickly for several tests. An amniotic fluid embolism, a rare allergic reaction in which amniotic fluid enters the mother's bloodstream and causes the heart and lungs to shut down, was the origin of her symptoms, which were discovered with a scan. Doctors hurried her to the operation room as her husband prayed, feeling completely powerless. "Please, allow me to hold my wife again." The doctors declared her dead while she was in the operating room as her condition deteriorated, but they still wanted to preserve the baby. Doug was left outside pacing while the doctors worked to save the newborn girl. They informed him that she was in a severe condition, and even if she survived, she would never be the same. Doug found it all to be too much. He and his wife had been anticipating the birth of their child for the last few months, but now he had to say goodbye. Despite feeling terrified and helpless, he got ready to say goodbye. Doug stated, "I am almost ashamed to say that my first thought was, I am a widower. They have come to tell me that my wife has died and that they did everything they could." However, he was unable to let her go without a struggle, so he handled things as best he could. He knelt and begged God to allow him to hold his wife once more in the most excruciating prayer he had ever had to recite. After that, he called his family and close friends, who all hurried to the hospital. They all prayed together while holding hands in the waiting area and individually uploaded their prayer requests on social media, where they quickly became popular. Melanie was in the operating room, battling to be revived, while everyone waited silently. However, the only information they provided was that their kid had been delivered via C-section safely. Doug decided to name their daughter Gabriella, the heroine of God. At the time he went to see his newborn baby, since he was unsure of his wife's condition. The moment the medics were able to revive his beloved wife, he was overjoyed for his child Gabriella, but also worried for her life because she still had a faint pulse. The doctors moved Melanie to the ICU after 48 hours, but despite their best efforts to keep her breathing, her condition only became worse. The staff spent an hour trying to revive Melanie, who had been without a pulse for 10 minutes, before they could even find a faint heartbeat. When Melanie's surgeon brother learned of her dire situation, he hurried to the hospital. He requested to check her records when he arrived, and the outcome only increased his anxiety. Her cardiovascular system had collapsed. Her relatives who were still in the waiting room were informed of the tragic tragedy, and they all realized they might not see her again. Doug entered his wife's room for a second time, even though it was a very sad and terrifying occasion, and he wasn't yet ready to deal with it. What follows is described in Melanie's own words. She said, "My husband came to my bedside. He took hold of my hand and said, 'I love you. I will always love you. If you have any fight left, then fight. Despite my hopes, promise me that you will follow your guardian angel wherever he leads you.'" Doug's faith was so powerful that it persuaded everyone else to believe the tragic circumstance would also turn around. Melanie's condition deteriorated following that. Even after 2 blood transfusions, she was still in severe condition when the medical staff realized what they had overlooked after a few hours. After running several scans, doctors found that she was internally bleeding. The blood transfusion failed because doctors mistakenly cut an artery while conducting the C-section. She was rushed to the operating room for the second time, this time in a far worse state than before. From where she lay unconscious, it appeared as though her entire body was giving up, her lungs had failed, and now the only thing fighting for her life was a respirator. She was able to survive those procedures despite having a 5-liter blood clot in her belly, which required her to lie with an open abdomen for 12 hours, while the doctors desperately sought to stop the hemorrhage. The medics who had surrendered waited for Melanie to draw her final breath, but she persisted. This was noticed by the doctor. They decided to transfer her to a superior medical facility. When they arrived, the medical personnel connected her to an extracorporeal membrane oxygenation machine, which would aid in her heart and lung recovery. They reduced the level of sedation until she regained consciousness because they also needed to examine her neurological functions. She then regained consciousness. Doug greeted her as he walked into the new hospital room. "Hey, babe." Melanie's eyes started to get watery. Doug was aware that although his wife wasn't brain dead at the time, she wasn't completely healthy either. I was elated, but I knew I wouldn't have much time as she would have to be sedated again for another surgery she might not make it through. I simply told her that I loved her and that I was so proud of her, recalled Doug. When the physicians first noticed that she was conscious, they were optimistic and getting ready for the crucial procedure that might save her life. Doug came in and gave her a picture of Gabriella.
Her sister came back in with a BlackBerry that had a picture of Ella on it, and it was terribly important to us because
just before the anesthesia was given, which roused her maternal instincts. After receiving an anesthetic, she lost consciousness. In the hopes that she would survive, the doctors set to work. As anticipated, she emerged from the surgery in good health, and within 24 hours the ventilator was taken away and she was once more able to breathe on her own. Melanie made a statement even though she doesn't recall the majority of what transpired. "I felt like when I had died, I went to heaven, and there was incredible peace I felt. I knew I couldn't maintain it because it wasn't like anything I felt on Earth," Melanie told Redbook. When Doug saw his wife again after the successful surgery, he recalls that she touched his face and said, "Hey babe, how are you?" I laughed and kissed her hand and cried. Melanie's next words were profound, though she did not know it. She had seen another picture of Ella and told me, "It's okay, honey. You can take care of the kids by yourself." I knew she simply meant that she would need time to recover and wouldn't be able to help as much as she would like, but my immediate response spoke to the severity of the situation she had just been through. I quickly responded, "I'm glad I don't have to." It was an emotional reunion. She was amazed and thankful to everyone who took the time to pray for her husband added when he relived the events. The ability for her to hold her daughter in her arms was the most precious part. They were finally back at home, and everyone was okay. Melanie is thankful for her physicians and nurses who struggled to save her and Gabriella today, but she is most thankful to be alive. When she spoke to the nurse who rolled her into the operating room a year later, she was informed, "I don't know if you're a woman of faith, but when I wheeled you in there, I felt like God was in there. It was amazing. You were deader than dead." Melanie says she has a fresh sense of strength and uses the event as a reminder to cherish every moment now that Gabriella is 4 years old and she has had time to think about what happened. Such a heartwarming story, right? I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Subscribe to my channel for more content and don't forget to hit the notification bell. Have you ever known someone who has gone through a tragic experience? What kind of stories do you guys want to see next? Let us know in the comment section down below. Until next time, thanks for watching.